Hello men, hello MGTOWs. Otto was born on April 3rd, 1880 as the second child of an accomplished artisan in Vienna. At the age of 18 he enrolled at the philosophical faculty of the University of Vienna, ignoring his father's wishes to study language. After completing his doctorate, he set to work on his masterpiece, Sex and Character, which was first published in 1903, then subsequently republished many times. After the completion of work, Weininger said to a friend, and this is hearsay, Maurice Rappaport, "There are three possible things for me: the gallows, suicide, or a future so bright that I do not dare to talk about it." Days after, he rented a room in a house which Beethoven died. There he spent a night, and in the early morning, on October 4th, in 1903, at the age of 23, he ended his life by gunshot to his chest. Otto Weininger had a short, brilliant life, and we've all enjoyed his book, Sex and Character, and we hear it around Manosphere. But Otto Weininger also wrote Last Aphorisms, and that's what I'm going to read out of, give you some of these aphorisms. This is Otto Weininger's motto: "Every true eternal problem is an equal true eternal fault. Every answer of atonement, every realization an improvement. The highest expression of morality is B. Man must act in such a way that the whole of his individuality lies in each moment. Sleep and dreams undoubtedly have something in common with the state of our birth. Algebra is conceptual, arithmetic, and intuitive. The present is a form of eternity. Judgment concerning the actual has the same form of judgment concerning the eternal. Connection with morality, which wants to transform all the present into eternity, to take into the narrowness of consciousness all the breaths of the world." What also leads to determinism is the fact that struggle is made necessarily continuously. In a particular case, the decision may follow quite ethically. The man may decide himself for the good, yet the decision is not lasting. He must struggle anew. There is a freedom, one might say, only for a moment. And that lies in the concept of a freedom. For what kind of freedom would it be which I thought a man act from some early time had brought forth, caused for all time? It is the very pride of man that he can be free anew at every moment. So for the future, as for the past, there is no freedom. Man has no power over them. I wonder what he means by them. That is why man can only never understand himself, for he is himself a timeless act, an act which he performs continuously, and there is a moment in which he might not perform it, as there would have to be an understanding of himself. Morality expresses itself thus: act in full consciousness, that is, act so that in every moment you are whole. Your entire individuality is there. Man experiences this individuality over the course of his life only in successive moments. That is why time is immortal, and no living person ever wholly perfect. If man once acts with the strongest will so that all universality of his self, in parentheses, and of the world, for he is indeed the microcosm, is set in the moment. Then has he overcome time and become divine. There is, however, one act which, so to speak, resorbs the future onto itself. Experience in advance all future falling back into immorality already as guilt, no less than all past immorality, and therefore surpasses both, a timeless posting of character rebirth. It is the act, though, which genuine arises. It is a moral demand that every action, the whole individuality of the person, should become apparent. Each should be complete overwhelming of time, of the unconscious, and of the narrowness of consciousness. Most of the time, however, man does not do what he wills, but what he has willed. Although his decision, he already gives himself onto the certain direction in which he moves until the next moment of reflection. Interesting. We do not will continuously. We only will intermediately, piece by piece. We thus save ourselves from willing principle of economy of the will. But the higher man always experiences this as thoroughly immoral. Present and eternity are connected, timeless, universal, logical reasoning. Have the form of present, logic is achieved ethics. And so also should all eternity life in every present. We also must not determine ourselves from within. This last danger too, this last deceptive appearance of autonomy, is to be avoided. Will, that is, will yourself entirely. Will, that is, will yourself entirely. What is right of socialism is that every man should strive to seek and find just his own self and particular nature, even yet his own property, and here this impossibility must not be restricted from the very beginning from outside. A man can be proud of acquiring riches and rightly look up to them as up to an inner moral work also. The fixed stars signifies the angel in man. That is why man orients himself by them. And that is why women have no appreciation for the starry sky, because they have no sense of the angel in man. Does nature also have a history? Its time also arranged for the events of nature as a whole? Insofar as that were the case, where would be the truth in the theory of evolution, paleontology? Is there no evolution of storms, of weather? The strange thing about time is that despite eternal change, everything in it remains the same. Boredom, conformity to law, casualty, newness, freedom. The overwhelming of time leads to the idea of the eternal youth, Wagner. Nature is eternal youth, for here indeed nothing changes, and yet everything is always new. People who have little that transcending time always feel world weary and bored, because in time everything remains the same. Siegfried, on the other hand, is eternal youth. The present is as spaceless as it is timeless, and the goal of humanity can be defined as mere presence of omnipotence. One usually understands omnipotence only as freedom from space, instead of understanding it as also including the absorption of the past and future, of everything unconscious and conscious present. The narrowness of consequences should contain the universe. Only then man is eternal youth and perfected. Pleasure is to be defined even more generally than the feeling of creation. It can only be defined unequivocally as the feeling of life, as becoming conscious of existence. Pain as the feeling of some kind of death. Thus sickness is painful. So let's talk a little bit about Weininger today. Sorry, I'm drinking a Miller Lite beer. I was boycotting Miller Lite because of its closeness to the NFL, but they kind of ended up in my refrigerator, so they became mine. So let's talk a little bit about Weininger. Unlike a lot of the philosophers, there was a lot known about Weininger, and when Weininger received his PhD, his first act was to renounce his faith, the faith of his father, and convert to Protestantism. At that time, it was not uncommon for many people to renounce their faith. And like today, I see many young men that are born and raised one faith, put away that faith, and what I would consider a move of individualism. So he was Jewish, and he's seen Judaism as extreme cowardice. The Jewish faith, he argued, was feminine, soulless. It had a lack of a sense of good and evil. I think Weininger believed in Christianity because Christ and Christianity became an idea to him. I could see that the philosophy for Otto was more important than the actual religion. Increasingly, Weininger adopted an ascetic lifestyle. He became an ascetic, focusing on inhibition to his sexual urges. Ascetics often do that. We see these in Buddhism, and we see this in a lot of really intelligent people too. They put away sexual urges and they focus on what their life is to be. They focus on their interest. Weininger's own sexual life remains something of a mystery. Some have suggested that in his appearance he precluded anyone falling in love with him would be ridiculous. His father remarked that Otto didn't have sex until his 20s, but there was little evidence of there. There was practically nothing about his relationship with women that could be accounted for his friends. There was one incident with a Mrs. Myers. His sister set him up with this Miss Myers, and they went out for an hour once, and Miss Myers said, "I have been with Jesus Christ." But you can imagine that a guy with that much intelligence would be very impressive to women. He wasn't a bad-looking guy. I've seen pictures of him, and he just took on an aesthetic lifestyle. We know what Nietzsche remarked about ascetics adopting their stringent disciplines because it puts away the sexual appetite, giving them a sense of giving the aesthetic a sense of power over themselves. Weininger remarked about women and his powerful creative drive. One suspected he was profoundly attracted to him, but his dedication to his idea demanded abstinence. Now we see this perfectly aligning with MGTOW. And Weininger may have been probably the first real MGTOW. There is also reason to suspect of an element of homosexuality, they say, but I just don't believe that. I think that's because at that time he was Jewish, and that's what would be expected at that time them to say about Weininger and his perceived masochism would be perceived as being homosexual. We get this when we're MGTOWs too. The first thing you say, I'm MGTOW, I don't do these things. I don't go out with women. I don't do these things. What, are you gay? So we could expect that with Weininger too. Later in Weininger's life, he became increasingly preoccupied with death. He turned increasingly inward, combined with his inordinately high standards and iron discipline, began to take its tolls. 21, 22 years old, he began to feel criminal urges along with sexual ones, and just started to have hallucinations. Weininger often talked about a dog barking and death. He thought that a dog barked 3 times. That would be at the time. It would be the time of his death. I literally had to fight against death just as I was falling asleep. I heard a dog bark 3 times in just the same way as he heard in Munich. As the dog began to symbolize death for Weininger, the horse did the same for insanity. With see, he says, I had feelings that a horse represented insanity. He started wondering about doppelgangers, and this led to his eventual suicide. So, in 1903, his suicide. So that's about all I'm going to talk about Weininger. I'll read a few more of these aphorisms because I kind of like them, and I hope you enjoy them too. The old maid is nothing which emerges out of woman, who, for moral reasons, is no longer met with by the man who creates her. So no child appears. She goes completely into ruin.